anyone who's ever competed in sports understands it more, I think, than people who don't compete in sports. Because there's this idea out there, because, hey, I'm woman, hear me roar, that women, use the women's soccer team as an example. The U.S. women's soccer team is the best women's team in the world. They got beaten by a 15-year-old boys team in Dallas, Texas, 5-2. These are 15 and under, talented Dallas, Texas soccer playing boys, 15-year-olds. Positive story here, Buck, as we're rolling through the Monday edition of the program. There's a professional surfer named Bethany Hamilton. And for some of you out there who may not remember all of her story, when she was 14 years old, she was attacked by a shark and lost her left arm. Despite that, she continued and turned herself into a professional surfer. And she came out over the weekend and aggressively attacked the idea of transgender male athletes who decide to identify as women being able to compete in surfing competitions, which is something that has been allowed. And she said, Buck, this concerns me as a professional athlete that's been competing in the World Surf League events for the past 15 plus years. I think many of the girls currently on tour are not in support with this new rule, and they fear being ostracized if they speak out. And so she is pointing out male body dominance in women's sports are occurring everywhere, and says as a result, and Buck, I think this is significant because this is something that many people out there have argued, I personally won't be competing in or supporting the World Surf League if this rule remains. And I think what you're seeing, Buck, is women's athletes are finally starting to speak out. And one thing, we talked about this with Riley Gaines as it pertained to the Leah Thomas swimming incident. One of the things that I heard most prominently, and I bet you've heard this too, is why didn't women just refuse to compete? Like, what happens if when everybody dives in, they stay and stand on the blocks? And that's kind of a challenge because you still want to compete. But I think this is kind of a strong statement here.
That's a difficult situation I could see for those female athletes because so you're gonna give away your competition to this lunacy. I mean, I think that's, and also imagine if you're Riley Gaines, you and a handful of girls, women, decide you're not going to compete, but a bunch of others do. And so now all of a sudden it's like, well, I got a silver medal. I'm happy because the best people in this race decided to sit it out on principled grounds. Or so you need total solidarity. And it's also very apparent that there's something nefarious behind so much of this because the apparatus will take action against you as a woman who speaks out against this. They want there to be cost. Why should there be cost for saying that you don't want this? If it's really just about, is there an advantage? What's the science? Can we have an adult discussion about this? No, because there's obviously an advantage. We all know what the science says, and they just want obedience.
Buck, anyone who's ever competed in sports understands it more, I think, than people who don't compete in sports. Because there's this idea out there, because, hey, I'm woman, hear me roar, that women, use the women's soccer team as an example. The U.S. women's soccer team is the best women's team in the world. They got beaten by a 15-year-old boys team in Dallas, Texas, 5-2. These are 15 and under, talented Dallas, Texas soccer playing boys, 15-year-olds. The fastest woman in the world is Sha'Carri Richardson, Buck. She would lose every Texas State boys sprint championship. In other words, 16, 17, 18-year-old boys in Texas are all faster than the fastest woman in the history of the world.
I mean, Clay, even down here in South Florida, when I go to the gym, there are female fitness models in the gym, and there are guys. I'm not saying I know too much about it, but the guys who go in there, they got a bit of a gut, spend a little too much time indoors. But if you have a 200-pound, 6-foot-tall guy, he's going to lift more weights than the fitness models, than the females who are, training 4 hours a day. He will bench press more than those women, with almost no exception. Like, we all understand the science very clearly here.
Well, that's our friend Zuby, who we've had on before, became the greatest women's lifting champion of all time to satirize the idea of men deciding to compete against women. And for everybody out there listening, what they've tried to argue is, oh, this isn't really a big deal. This is not becoming an issue. No, in the next 5 to 10 years, I really believe this. Your daughters and granddaughters, if this continues, are going to be competing against men all over the place. Every state, every school district is going to have this as an issue. And I give credit to Bethany Hamilton for speaking out as aggressively as she is about this story, because that's what it's going to take in order for things to actually change.
I mean, I can't imagine getting my arm bitten off by a shark and then getting back in the ocean. So
I would never get in the water again. Talk about bravery. If I ever got attacked by a shark in any way, much less had a serious injury, I would never get in the ocean again.
I mean, I think if like a sea turtle nibbled on my feet, I'd be a little freaked out, So I can't imagine. Like, I'm not an ocean guy. That's all I can tell you.
I mean, the bravery of that by itself is. I remember when that happened. And she said, "Oh, I'm going to go back. I love surfing." I was like, the fact she may be the most mentally tough athlete on the planet, because when you're in the water like that, how would you not think about getting attacked again?
I mean, do you ever freak out a little bit even when you're in like a lake somewhere and you step on something weird? I mean, because,
Oh, yeah.
we've all seen
I don't
Jaws.
like it when I can't see the bottom.